There is no doubt that Russia appears to be stronger than Ukraine, but Ukraine may not be as weak as it seems. Over the last month, Ukraine's civilians and its politicians have shown great courage in confronting the problems. Since the Russian attack was so severe, the Ukrainians had to face that attack, and their reaction was backfire. Despite the fact that Russia used all of its strength to invade Kyiv, they weren't able to take it because of the strong Ukrainian army, and the same army recently crushed Russia's Platoon. Please stay tuned to find out how the whole story unfolds. Welcome to Warzone. If you don't want to miss out on any new political news, conflicts, battles, or anything else related to politics, then subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button so that you will always be notified. It has now been almost a month since Russia invaded and attacked Ukraine in what has been condemned as an unprovoked and unjustifiable attack by Western nations. According to the United Nations, it is estimated that more than 3.5 million refugees have fled Ukraine, and the bombarded cities are experiencing a humanitarian crisis. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russian forces have taken prisoners fleeing Mariupol after agreeing on a humanitarian corridor on March 22nd. The president of Russia has tightened his grip on the country while fomenting fears that he may switch to more aggressive tactics abroad after Alexei Navalny, one of the leading Kremlin critics, was sentenced to 9 more years in a maximum security prison. Zelensky reported that Russian forces had captured people fleeing the besieged city of Mariupol after agreeing on an escape route. In a speech, Zelensky said that emergency services employees had been taken prisoner near the town of Manhush, about 12 miles west of Mariupol in Ukraine. Zelensky said, "For more than a week now, we have been trying to organize stable humanitarian corridors for Mariupol residents, and almost all our attempts, unfortunately, are disrupted by the Russian occupiers, by shelling or deliberate terror." The Associated Press reported that Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk claimed that the Russians had seized 11 bus drivers and 4 firefighters, along with their vehicles, from the area. It wasn't clear exactly what happened to them. NBC News has not independently verified Zelensky's claims or the figures that she provided. Zelensky made these remarks just a day after he refused to surrender the strategically important city, which has been under constant attack for weeks. In fact, he said that about 7,000 people had been rescued from the city on Tuesday. Moreover, the United Nations has reported that 953 civilians, including 78 children, have been killed since Russia invaded the country last month. However, it is likely that that actual death toll is much higher. Moreover, the last 2 weeks into Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, military analysts from the West watch as a humanitarian catastrophe unfolds as they try to make sense of the situation on the battlefield. To date, the war has been characterized in no small part by the unexpectedly poor performance of the Russian military. It is possible to explain this partly by inadequate operational plans based on wishful political thinking and an underestimation of the Ukrainians' ability to resist. Even though the Russian army has so far failed to capture Kyiv, it has been displaying serious difficulties in logistics and the coordination of its various branches of the military. All this raises the question of whether the Russian military is suffering from only incompetent and corrupt leadership, or whether it is also suffering from deep-seated organizational problems. Certainly, it would appear that Russia is finding it difficult to replicate the successful operations conducted by its elite expeditionary forces on a much larger scale against an opponent that is well organized. However, the military's approach to force generation seems to also have contributed to many of the challenges it has faced in the field. After Russia invaded Crimea in October 2021, it sent battalion tactical groups to the border with Ukraine, occupied Crimea, and then occupied Belarus. As in every Russian brigade or regiment, the 1st Battalion is made up of only contract and professional soldiers. The same applies in some cases to the 2nd Battalion, in VDV airborne forces, to all battalions, and the 1st Company of Combat Support Battalions, such as artillery units, air defense units, and logistic units, usually transport units. It therefore means that the Russian military can quickly mobilize forces during a conflict without having to send conscripts or reserves into the battle. This approach can be effective for operations that are only meant to be a display of force, such as the previous incidents that occurred in the vicinity of Ukraine's borders, or that involve a relatively low intensity of the conflict. For example, Russian battalion tactical groups have been rotating through Donbass at a very much lower noise level than recent efforts to deploy a brigade in order to empty entire garrisons. And on the other hand, this approach is unable to handle full-scale maneuver warfare. There are a number of reasons why Russia's regular army is organized into brigades and divisions, and a few of these reasons have become apparent in the last 2 weeks. Firstly, there is the issue of coordination. In the weeks before the invasion, the Russian army prepared to attack various staging areas by deploying army-level command and control equipment. It is logical to assume that operative maneuver groups, formed of roughly 12 to 20 battalion tactical groups, are led by a headquarters. However, there is little evidence that Russia operated its brigade commands in this manner between the ranks of the army and the battalion levels during the first and most dramatic phase of the war, Blitzkrieg. It may have improvised some in the second phase. Whenever commanders try to lead too many elements inside a force at the same time, they become overwhelmed and are unable to coordinate their efforts effectively. It is fair to say that this is effectively what happened to the Russian military in Ukraine. The problem is even more acute for combat support troops. For example, 4 air defense batteries from different units do not equate to an air defense battalion. There is a need for air defense battalion and regiment command structures to coordinate firing sectors with one another and with aerospace forces. Without such coordination, air defense units are unable to identify friendly aircraft and vice versa. As a consequence, aircraft cannot effectively engage in close air support operations because they are afraid of being shot down by their own air defense systems. Additionally, they cannot attack radars and air defense systems without running the risk of destroying friendly units, especially if the two sides who are at war are using the same types of systems. At the same time, air defense units are reluctant to engage targets because they cannot differentiate between friends and foes. And this is exactly what is happening to the Russian military in Ukraine. Ukrainian drones, known as Bayraktar, have been taking out Russian air defense systems at an astounding rate since last year. Secondly, there is the issue of logistics. The Russian battalion tactical groups are accompanied by detachments of supply trucks, which provide them with fuel and ammunition on the battlefield. But maintenance and repair workshops are brigade and division level assets. There was a time before Russia entered the Ukraine conflict when Russian battalion tactical groups were engaged in a number of maneuvers along the border, which increased the requirement for routine maintenance. Now, of course, Russian vehicles regularly break down due to wear and tear. If the Russian army had realized what the scale of the conflict really was, it would likely have gone to war in a very different structure, a structure based on brigades, divisions, and armies. There is no question that the Kremlin made the decision to hide the war from the public as much as possible, which meant that the military had to build up its forces only through the deployment of battalion tactical groups. In many cases in the past, President Vladimir Putin and his entourage have underestimated the complexity of military operations, and this is one of many examples. Yet one should not assume that a poorly performing Russian army would leave us little to fear in case the Red Army wins this war. The Russian government is unlikely to repeat the same mistakes when it launches a new war on distinct political grounds. President Joe Biden is widely expected to announce plans to maintain an increased number of troops permanently overseas in NATO countries near Ukraine during his visit to Europe. At the same time, NATO's response force is also made up of a loose collection of battalions. Some of the smaller NATO nations in Central Europe have armies consisting of just a few battalions, and because of this, they lack the embedded structure necessary to train and fight in a high-intensity war. Therefore, it is hugely important that NATO develops integrated force structures. However, one of the most urgent tasks for the alliance is to help Ukraine survive. Russia may attempt to create new forces by requiring conscripts to sign contracts with the army by 1 April 2022, when conscripts will leave military service formally. But before they have a chance to do so, the West should urgently increase their military support to the Ukrainian armed forces and impose sanctions on Russia that are strong enough to impact their war economy. Alright everyone, this brings us to the end of our video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until then, take care and we will be back with another video.